Hi, my name is Debra Richardson, and I have stiff person syndrome. This is my second in a series of what I hope to do to help, inform, and encourage with the syndrome of Fireside Chats. This one is my intro, and I'm approaching it like I would a resume. Just who am I and what am I about? Because you see so many things on the internet where people do not validate themselves or their symptoms. So I will start with my qualifications, my symptoms. They started roughly when I was 31 years old with the onset of type 1 diabetes and a dull backache. And from there it just escalated to a feeling of uncertainty and fear when I was out in public, of steps, open space. I had a couple falls, stitches, the whole enchilada, and it just kept getting worse. And like everyone else's story, it's very typical. I kept going to doctors, had wrong misdiagnoses. My symptoms progressed to the fact that in February 28th, in 1994, and I write this in my story on my website, Stiff Person Living Forward, that was my last day of work, and for some reason I went in that day and I couldn't let go of anything. My whole body was resistant to movement. I was scared. I was panicking. It was awful. And I finally made it to my first break. And I went in, clutching the walls, holding the table, sitting down, thinking, if I just sit for 10 minutes, I'm going to be okay. I wasn't. I had to call the nurse, and my girlfriend had to walk me to my car. I got in my car, and when I went home, I had to navigate like Spider-Man around the walls to sit down, and there was no more denying to myself something was wrong. So for the next several months, my former husband and I were on a circuit of trying to find out what was wrong, and I couldn't even hardly navigate my house. Work finally got upset and sent me to their doctor, who was a godsend. This man examined me closer than anybody else had ever done. And he finally, in frustration, threw his clipboard down on the examining table, and he validated me with the words, "You have something wrong with you, and I have no idea what it is. You need to be seen by some experts." He said, "There's something from medical school that niggles in my head, but I don't know what it is." So that's when I went to Cleveland Clinic, and it was during Dr. Hiroshi Matsumoto's tenure there. Dr. Matsumoto is an ALS research doctor, and a very good doctor. He did a clinical evaluation. He already knew what was wrong, but he ordered up the tests that were necessary, an EMG. There I was, getting my EMG, with 3 other neurologists hovered around the screen, making comments like, "Remarkable, did you see that?" I tested positive on the EMG. There was no relaxation with the electrical currents that went through my body, and they did from the toes all the way up to my neck on both sides. Then he ordered a GAD antibody test. Dr. Solomena and Pietro Di Camelli were at Yale at the time, and they were the ones that discovered the GAD antibody that was specific for stiff person syndrome. So my antibody was set off. But Dr. Matsumoto was very certain, before the antibody even came back and it was off the roof. It's too bad it wasn't lottery. I would be a millionaire right now. But he told me that I had stiff man syndrome. And that is when he tried to get IVIG for me. It was experimental. Dr. Simon Healthgott from Brigham and Women's had done a mini study about it and recorded it in Bedside to Bench. And I was approved for it, and I rebounded amazingly well. So they did not know if it would be long-term or not, because Delakas hadn't done a study yet, as I had said before. So they withdrew the treatment, and I plummeted. I was in worse condition than when I was diagnosed. And then trying to reinstate it, they considered it experimental, which it was. So I phoned Dr. Health God. He was very personable, very sweet to me, talked to me, and he said that should be approved for you. And he told me about one lady in particular who was getting her IVIG and was able to come into the hospital, get her treatment, and leave. So he wrote me a letter. He wrote a letter on my behalf for insurance. I never had to use it because they reinstated it, but I kept the letter because it was a reminder to me that there were people that cared and were working hard for the benefit of people like me with a rare disease. In 2002, I was extended an invitation to participate in the cause, development, and progression of stiff person syndrome at NIH, a research study done under Dr. Delakas, and Dr. Rakocevic was his fellow under him. I was very impressed with both men. In the 2 years I was in that study, I got to contribute something back to the stiff person community by donating my DNA, my time, to these two wonderful men, very professional, who treated me very kindly. So those are my references. And now you probably wonder, as with any job, what do you hope to accomplish by this? I just know how alone I felt when I was diagnosed, and it was before there was the internet. And I had no one to talk to. I never talked to another soul with stiff person syndrome until we got a computer in 2000 for Christmas. I never talked to anybody. I didn't know anybody. In some ways that was good, because sometimes there's too much sharing and you assume that somebody else's journey is yours, but it's not. But I just know that period of loneliness, and I'm not diminishing this, when somebody gets a diagnosis of cancer, how serious that is and how life-altering it is. But people understand it, they have support groups, and people automatically know. When you get a diagnosis with a frivolous name, stiff man syndrome, and nobody's ever heard of it, and there's very limited information, and you're trying to explain it to somebody, and the way the syndrome has such quirky symptoms, the way your nervous system is derailed in your perceptions, and the way you try to move, manipulate your emotions, and it's not mental, but it's very hard to understand, and just to have somebody that knew. So in 2004, without any computer classes whatsoever, I had broken 2 ribs, so I couldn't actually participate, but I went to a class for HTML. And with a little bit of HTML knowledge, I put together my first website. I tried 3 different variants of it before I put it out there. And it was amazing how many people it touched. The outpouring of mail I received, it overcame me. Sometimes it would cause spasms, rigidity, but at the same time it warmed my heart. And I'm going to tell you one incident that really touched me. A gentleman wrote to me, and he said, "Thank you for writing." He said, "I did not know what my wife was going through, and she committed suicide. But I want to thank you for helping me understand." It was just a few weeks later, I got another email, and it was from a young man. And he thanked me. He said, "My mom committed suicide." He said, "We didn't understand what she was going through." He He said, I want to thank you for helping me understand. So with the incidence of 1 in a million, it wasn't hard to figure out they were talking about the same lady. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not for money. It's not for fame. If I help just one person by sharing my experiences and my story and what I have gone through, it's worth it to me. This is why I do it. This is why I invest the time and the energy. There's a lot more to my journey, but I just wanted to start out by validating myself so that you know from all the stuff that's out there in the internet, I am the real deal. I've been through it, still go through it, but I've come through so much. Life is good. I've overcome a lot. It's pretty amazing. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. And for those of you who are uncertain, and I know you're out there, just know I understand. I care. Other people care. And there are good people out there working for our benefit. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless.